board meeting. We will begin with a Pledge of Allegiance followed by the invocation. If you would please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for this day that you have given to us. Lord, please bless our time that we are gathered and we deliberate on behalf of our students in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County. Lord, we thank you for the beautiful weather, and we hope that you are with our students as they're catching up on some exams and testing, and with our teachers. Lord, we thank you from this board seat for the opportunity to serve a great community. Lord, we ask that you lift up those who are in need, lift up those who are struggling, and you know what their needs are. And Lord, as a district, just help us to hear the needs of our staff and our students and to act accordingly. Thank you for such a caring and loving community that we live in. Amen. You may be seated. Board members, we have a couple of changes to our agenda this evening. One would be in the discussion section. Take your attention to item C, Education Resource Group Contract with Hall Woodward. We would like to remove that, as well as from action items, we would remove that same contract, and that is also item C in action. I believe that's the only changes we have to the agenda. If you don't have any questions, do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Mr. Singletary. Second? Ms. Clark, all in favor? Thank you. At this time, we have some special recognitions, and I will call on Dr. Amy Nail.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to share a couple of recognitions and celebrations. As you know, our school libraries play an important role in growing readers and giving students access to resources so they can be successful in their academic pursuits. 2 literacy grants awarded this year support this role of our school library media programs. The Laura Bush Literacy Grant was given to Ronetta Snyder, media coordinator at Northwest Middle School, where my son teaches. In this grant, librarians must use grant funds specifically to expand their media center collections by buying only books, hardcover, paperback, or ebooks. The list of books purchased at Northwest Middle is listed on the school's website. Please help me to celebrate the success of Ronetta Snyder from Northwest Middle School.
Thank you. On behalf of the board, we'd like to present this to you, and thank you for your hard work and what you're doing. We appreciate that, and I know the board would like to individually express that, so if you'd like to go around and talk to them. Thank you.
A second literacy grant awarded to our district is the federal IAL, I have trouble saying that every year, Innovative Approaches to Literacy grant that we call the Reading Railroad Express. Jackie Pearson, Director of Library Media Services, is the grant director. As you know, this grant funds literacy activities at 6 of our schools: Cook Literacy Model School, Diggs-Latham, Kimberly Park, North Hills, Old Town, and Petrie, including buying books for the library collection, author visits, and home library books for preschoolers and book giveaways, as well as providing funds for digital teaching and learning coach to be shared by the 6 schools. In addition, it funds the literacy bus which visits neighborhoods during the summer to give books away and allows libraries to be open for a few hours each week in July. Our district has greatly benefited from the 2 IAL grants totaling over $1 million over the past 4 years. I hope that you'll help me to congratulate Miss Jackie Pearson.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you. So the board would like to present you with this certificate and thank you for all that you do to support our media centers throughout the district. And thank you for always keeping us up to date with what's going on with Reading Railroad and opportunities that we can kind of see things in action. We appreciate it. Thank you. Yes. That concludes our special recognitions this evening, and we have no one signed up for public comments. We'll move right into our discussion items, and I will call on Dr. Emery.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you all will indulge me just a second, I want to give a little bit of context for this for our community. Many of you may know that almost 2 years ago, the General Assembly passed a statute establishing lab schools in the state of North Carolina, and they are regionally partnered with schools of education in the UNC system, basically challenging these UNC schools of education to help us in our quest to improve performance in particularly identified low-performing schools. We were matched up with Appalachian State University and have been working for over a year on a collaboration, and we say that because the statute gave the universities authority to basically come in and take a school, and that has not been our experience. This has been a pleasant experience. We have worked to decide which school makes sense and to try to do that in a way that is best for the community and the children that school currently serves. So in the fall of 2018, Middle Fork Elementary School, as you know, becomes the Appalachian State Lab School on the Middle Fork campus. And the action that we're recommending to our board tonight just takes care of children who may decide not to go to the lab school. So currently we have a public school and we have children who are residential to that school. We have some children from the zone who have choiced in, and we have some children who have choiced out to other schools in the zone. And we hope that if they want to stay, they will apply and go to Middle Fork and stay at their neighborhood school. But because the school will no longer be in the jurisdiction of this Board of Education, we must give those children a new residential school. And so the board has received some data, and Jackie, I'm going to ask you if you would help me with just walk this through so our community can see. I'm going to move past the first slide. We can go back if the board has questions.
Is it on there, Alex?
Dr. Emery, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
Does Appalachian pay rent for the use of our building, or?
So we have teams, probably everybody in this room is on some kind of team, everything from assignment to child nutrition. This is an extensive operation. So in some cases the statute provides, so for example, Appalachian can take over the facility, but we still own it, and we will still operate pre-K off that site because we need the space for pre-K. And we are working on memorandums of understanding that cover transportation and food service and all the things that folks at the university level may not have realized, like security and fire drills. And I mean, it's extensive in terms of covering all of our bases. And at least to date, they have indicated that instead of them worrying about those operational things, they would like to contract with us for them. So at some point, you will see a formal memorandum, and there will be costs attached, Elizabeth, to certain of those things that we can charge for, that the statute allows us to charge for.
I guess my question about rent is, my confusion is, why is the General Assembly allowed to appropriate one of our buildings without reimbursing us for the cost of using that building? Because that would seem to me, I mean, and I understand there's all these moving parts, but it would seem to me that the General Assembly should not have authority to take the use of our building that the taxpayers in Forsyth County paid for and not have to pay a fair market rent for the use of that. That's just my concern, and I'm very concerned, particularly when there's talk about charter school takeover. In what way is the General Assembly appropriating buildings that actually belong to the taxpayers of Forsyth County?
So I will
That's
so note the concern, and I think you've shared it here. I think our approach, and you know this, has been, how do we, these are still our kids. They may go to a lab school, but they're still our children, and so how do we make this the best scenario possible? I think because we already had partnerships with Appalachian, we've also talked about how do we make this benefit our staff. So hopefully, as this school gets up and running, the intent is that it's another place to build literacy development, that teachers in the district would be able to go there and get credit and credentialing for literacy skills, a master's degree, even administration opportunities down the road. We're at the we're on the beginning of that, but that's the hope here. And this first round that is very challenging, I will just say, it's challenging because we do this, we've been doing it forever, and sometimes we don't even stop to think about things like who's going to test the fire extinguishers, and how do we, if it's our building, how do we ensure compliance with the state mandated fire drills? And so on and on and on it goes. In fact, Alex, what did we have? 5, 6, 8 pages of things that we're working on that need to be incorporated into this memorandum of understanding. So I'm going to go back here and we'll take all your questions, but I want to thank Home On. So what you see in the recommendation is that we're basically assigning the current Middle Fork residential students to 3 of the schools in this zone, and that's based on capacity. So they are largely Ibraham, Mineral Springs, and Walkertown. And that's just because Ashley doesn't have capacity, and obviously there will be some of that with choice. What Home On has done for you in this first chart is show you what the capacity is, what this year's enrollment is, and then that first column shows you if all of the kids currently assigned to Middle Fork decided they did not want to go to the lab school, this is what the capacity could look like in the other schools. Then you have a 50% column, so if 50% decide to go, and then if 80% decide to go. Right now, this is a moving target. We know 169 current Middle Fork children have put in applications to stay at the lab school. We expect that number will grow. And so we don't think we're going to be looking at a 0% number here, but we have to plan for that so that each of these kiddos and families have an assigned residential school. Then you have maps that basically show you the current geography, and then the very last map is just what this geography looks like if we adopt this assignment plan. We are asking you under action items tonight to approve this so that in our normal notification that goes out to folks, we can get these letters out and folks will know before they get into the choice period what their residential school assignment will be, so they have the same opportunities to make choices as any other families in the district would have. Now I'll stop, and if you have questions, I'm happy to, if I can't answer them, I'll pick on Home On or Amy or others who helped us with this.
questions for Dr. Emery or staff?
Dr. Emery, I just wanted to take a moment and express my thanks and appreciations to you and staff. This is a new type of program, something that we've never seen before. And you and your staff have managed to take this from what could have potentially been a negative relationship and turned it into what appears to be a positive relationship. So thank you for all of that effort in managing that. We appreciate it.
Others, if not, we'll move on. Okay, wonderful. Alex is in the right spot. Next, we will talk about amendment to the 18-19 calendar.
So good evening, Chair Jones, Dr. Emery, and board members. You might recall that back in May, I stood here before you and we presented our recommendation for the 2018-19 school calendar, and there was a calendar that was approved. And that calendar contains some early release days for teachers to have professional development in the afternoons. One of those dates is February 20th of 2019. And we have recently found out from DPI that the mandated assessment of the ACT for juniors is scheduled to occur on that day. It is very difficult to try to get testing in and get lunch in and get everything else that needs to happen on those early release days in a shortened schedule. So we are recommending tonight that you approve an amendment to the calendar to change that early release day from February 20th to February 27th. That has a couple of additional positive attributes to it. First of all, it's a little bit later in the year, so we might not have as many opportunities to lose the day because of weather. Second of all, our senior students take their work keys for CTE completers during the month of February, and although we don't know what that window is, it's usually in the first couple of weeks, so pushing that back actually makes sure that we are not going to be interfering with those assessments as well. So our recommendation is that we move it from the 20th to the 27th to avoid those conflicts. Any questions for me?
Questions? Straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have our Building and Grounds Committee report. Ms. Lyda Calvert-Hayes.
We've had a busy schedule again. Tonight, we were presented with two of our workers for our school system, Deborah Cleanard and Jason Harmon, and they were recognized for excellent service that they've done for Winston-Salem, for Forsyth County Schools. So we certainly want to congratulate them. I'm sorry that they weren't here tonight so they could stand up, but they have given us excellent service. Once a month, we try to find our employees that have gone beyond the call of duty. So congratulations to Deborah and Jason. You know, in Buildings and Grounds, we talk about sewer a lot, and we are back on sewer again. We are on the Mou Sewer update, which is in progress right now and being reviewed. So we will get to talk about this even more as the time comes. I never knew in being a contractor myself how much we would be talking about sewers. But there's a lot going on when you're doing schools and construction for sewers. So there will be a continuation on sewers, so get ready for the sewer report. We also talked about our bond project cost review. We went in to where we were on that, where we need to be, and had great explanation on where we were for our bond. And if you're not tracking that, you can track that on your computer. We've gone over several times as to how you can see exactly where your nickels and dimes and pennies and dollars are going. So, you know, get in the loop. Look at that. If you have any questions, be sure and call. We have people that will be more than happy. We have Daryl and Colin sitting back there, and they would be more than happy to answer your questions on that. We want you to be involved. This is your tax money. We also talked about public water mains, the applications. That's the fire hydrants at Conoke Elementary School with the city of Winston-Salem. So when you talk about buildings and grounds, you don't think so much about those fire hydrants, but we're talking a lot about fire hydrants also. We got to have them for all our schools, and that does involve the city of Winston-Salem also. So that was discussed too. Technology, we're really excited about what's going on in our technologies. In our schools, we have 380 classrooms that are completed now. We are right on track, and we have 12 schools that are completely completed with our technology. We talked also, which we have brought up before, about Parkland and the traffic for Parkland, and we will be voting on that tonight. We also talked about CM at risk for Philo Middle School. We do have a contractor that we have talked to. We've had several meetings about our CM at risk program, and we will be voting on that also tonight. If you have any questions on buildings and grounds, let us know. Be a part of it. Like I said, get involved. Look at where your nickels, dimes, pennies, and your tax money is going. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Singletary, Policy Committee report.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chairman, the Policy Committee met today and we discussed two items. The first item was length of teacher contracts. We are now able, due to changes with the General Assembly, to actually look at hiring teachers to either 1, 2, or 4-year contracts. The General Assembly has given us some parameters, but they have given us quite a bit of local discretion on how we would build that particular, those particular contracts. So Dr. Emery and her staff will be seeking input, looking at various types of criteria that we need to look at that would support hiring teachers into those particular contracts. We're looking forward to learning more about that, and I think that's a positive. I think it's a positive thing for our teachers. So. Also, Dr. Emery has proposed a new administrative rule which is going to deal with the assignment of pupils for our HAG program sites. And this particular program is going to bring additional choice and equity into our student assignments, and we'll be hearing more about that as Dr. Emery releases those details for parents for student assignment. Thank you.
And that's just for elementary?
That is, yes ma'am, just for elementaries. My apologies. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Clark, the Curriculum Committee report.
Yes. We had a great meeting last week, as always. We covered two topics, and I'll just introduce both of them because this applies when I say that I am always constantly amazed at the level of people that work for our district and the lengths that they go to reach our children. And when I become a bit frustrated at the lack of speed that things happen sometimes, as all of us are wont to do, I then remember, as I did this past Tuesday when we had curriculum, that the wide range of children each and every day whose needs we have to meet. And so both of these topics that we covered that day, EC, exceptional children, and some evidence-based strategies that they use in their world to teach EC children, and then personalized learning, both of those topics cover or give voice to the fact that we have lots and lots of diverse learners at all levels, in all grades, of all ages, and at varying needs. And so we have lots of teachers, and we met many of them last week who do that every day. So Sam Dempsey, our EC guru, introduced us to several people on his team, and they shared with us, and we're grateful to them for coming and for spending their time to be with us at curriculum. Shared with us about several evidence-based instruction techniques and programs. And I'll just mention a couple. I won't give you the whole rundown because it would take me a long time to read the details. But one is called Corrective Reading, and that's designed to break poor reading habits and accelerate reading growth of the at-risk student. Then we looked at Hill Rap, a reading achievement program which is structured, intervention-based, research-based, a multi-sensory structured language approach to teaching reading, which involves 45 to 60 intensive minutes of intervention.
and a student-to-teacher ratio that's very small. Then we looked at Language Live, a blended model that involves word training and text training. And then TransMath, a math program that is also designed for students who are 1 or 2 years below reading level. All in the world of exceptional children, which the phrase exceptional children just is vast. It's almost like to infinity and beyond when we're talking about the learning levels of children. Then we talked about personalized learning, and really that is, to me, just what it sounds like, personalized learning. So it's kind of a new concept, and we were introduced by Marty Creech, our Director of Digital Learning, and then Brittany Guy, and she's the guru of personalized learning. And so it's a student-centered teaching where the pace of learning and the instructional approach is optimized for the needs of each learner. So it's kind of like giving the kids a lot of options and letting them be in charge of and own their learning. And so what we learned from an elementary teacher and a middle school teacher and a high school teacher is that the kids really do respond well, and they're seeing lots of growth to personalized learning. So we have 20 teachers in 16 schools in the district are currently have been trained on personalized learning, and the goal is to train many more in the district. And that's the direction we're headed. So again, thank you to Sam and to Marty and to all those teachers in both divisions that came to be with us. We just are so grateful for all you do and for sharing your time on a Tuesday afternoon with us.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. And it was, it was a great meeting, very, really good. Okay, that concludes our discussion items this evening. We will move into action items. First, we have consider approval of the Elementary Zone 3 assignment plan that Dr. Emery just discussed. Do I have a motion to approve? So moved. Mr. Singletary, do I have a second? Ms. Clark, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of an amendment to the 18-19 calendar. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Motzinger, and second, Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of joint use agreement for 690 North Trade Street. If you'll remember, we have discussed this several times, and I think went through some revisions and back and forth. So do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Ms. Motzinger, second. Ms. Calvert-Hayes, any discussion? All of those in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of authorization to bid the Parkland High Traffic Improvements. Do I have a motion to approve? Ms. Taylor, and second, Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of construction manager at risk for Philo Hill Magnet Academy. Do I have a motion to approve? I think lots of motions. So Mr. Singletary and a second by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Approval of the application and conveyance agreement with the City of Winston-Salem. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Ms. Calvert-Hayes, second. Ms. Taylor, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of budget amendment number 2 and transfer number 2. Do I have a motion to approve? Ms. Parker, do I have a second?
Yes.
Ms. Motzinger, any discussion at this time? I would just like to say we have talked about the budget amendment number 2 and transfer number 2 at our last Finance Committee meeting. I have some reservation at this point on voting on some of our budget amendments and transfers. I think that it's been about a month ago where it came to our attention that around $300,000 of funds had been spent without board approval, and I think we owe it to ourselves as an organization to try to go back and look at some checks and balances and some things that need to happen so that the process for us is more transparent, as well as more transparent for the community. And so we haven't had those conversations as a board, and until we kind of are able to move that direction, then I can't support those transfers and amendments. Okay, but we have a motion on the floor, and we have a second by Ms. Motzinger, and so I will call the question. All in favor? So I have, Mr. Johnson, are you voting for that? 3? Okay, so I have 3 in favor, all opposed? Okay, so the motion fails. So I think it's, do I have any other discussion, or anyone want to make any, is there anything on the budget that anyone would like to talk about or pull off, or you want to send it back to committee?
Madam Chairwoman, we did have a particular funding piece related to our teachers. Would you help me real quick?
Well, if you want to pull up
Yes.
the budget amendment, it should pull up.
Yeah.
If you go down, you will see kind of the breakout
Yes,
of that. And if you're, Ms. Singletary, are you trying to pull some items off of this? Is that what you're?
Yeah, I believe that we have some pieces on here that really need to move forward.
You had, yeah, there's some salaries in there and things
Yeah.
like that,
Absolutely.
such as career, the one on career tech and
You know what?
IDA and
I
title.
think we can do this an easier way. I believe in our finance committee that there were some issues, I think, with 3 items. And I believe if we remove those 3 items and vote for the rest, we would be good. But those items were, I think it was item number 1, the budget amendment, local current expense fund concerning the Duke rebates. So if we can take that off of the table. And then item number 4, under other restricted fund, miscellaneous income, sale of recycled materials, I think if we can take that off the table. And then the capital outlay fund, item number 2, funds for sale of leased computers. I believe when we were in finance committee, those particular items came up. I would feel comfortable if we take those items off and vote to approve the remaining items.
So do you make that in the form of a motion,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Barr?
Yes.
To just remove the items that you listed?
Right.
And as Mr. Barr so eloquently put, I would be
So you
happy to
second his
that.
motion?
Yes.
Do we have discussion, board members? Ms. Motzinger?
I would just like to make a comment that I've served on this board for about 12 years. I am so aware of how complex a budget is for an organization this size, that we have really talented people overseeing different areas who are more careful with money than any elected person I've ever known. And so personally, I find it kind of disrespectful to the people who work here full-time, who are really aware of the budget. We are a part-time board. We're overseeing a budget of almost $500 million a year. And I think trying to pick out bits and pieces, I think we talk about budget items. I think people are always pretty direct with us. When there's a small miscommunication, I really am uncomfortable with the implication that somehow anybody has not been forthcoming with us. And I just feel I need to say that my experience is that we have a staff that is careful and meticulous and knows the decisions they're making really well and share with us information as we ask for it.
Thank you, Ms. Motzinger. Any other comments, board members? Mr. Johnson?
My complaint is that we voted for 25 buses, and I thought that carried. I have real problems coming up, taking that money from another area and putting on 3 more buses. I have real problems with that. We need to put that money back where it came from, because that money was earmarked for something else. And I just don't think it is right for us to just let that money float out there and get 3 more buses when we voted on 25 buses. That is not good policy.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
And Madam Chairman, if I may, I don't know anybody on this board who considers themselves a part-time board member. I also don't know anybody on this board who would intentionally want to show disrespect or reflect any intention of disrespect on any member of staff or Dr. Emery for the job that they do. And they do an exceptional job. That being said, we have an obligation to the residents and the voters of Forsyth County that we always provide transparency. And we have seen over the last 45 days that there has been an incident where there has been a lack of transparency, and we need to have that resolved. And I don't call a $300,000 mistake something little, and we need to get that resolved. And that's part of what's going on here, and we thank you.
Okay, so we have, if there's no other comments, then we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Barr. We have a second by Mr. Singletary. So all in favor of the motion?
Of the amended motion.
Of the amended motion, yeah, we just had a whole new motion. So we have 4 in favor, is that correct? All. Yes, sir.
Taking those.
You are in favor of that, okay, so we have 5 that are in favor of that. All opposed? Okay, so 4 are opposed, so the motion carries 5-4. Thank you very much, I appreciate that. That concludes our action items for this evening, and that moves us into our consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent agenda, and that's the approval of the meeting minutes for the January 9th, 2018 meeting, and approval of the general personnel report. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Singletary, second. Ms. Taylor, all in favor? Motion carries. We have 1 person signed up for speakers from the floor. At this time, I'll recognize Mr. Danner.
Thank you for joining us on your school channel, Cable 2.